Crossovers have always been a beloved aspect of a television network, especially with animated series. Seeing two or more programs, usually distinct in art style and tone, collide for a brand new adventure. However, whereas live-action crossovers are easier to accept at face value due to the medium and assumption of being rooted in our exact reality, animated crossovers are a much different beast. Do these cartoons take place in the same world? Are the events of these crossovers canon to the franchises involved? How does this all work in the grand scheme of things? While these questions were easier to overlook in the late 90s and early 2000s, the trend of serialized narratives and cartoons that seem episodic by design, alongside the mass evolution of discussion and analysis for these shows on the internet, makes it a lot harder to avoid these burning questions, which is probably why most story-driven cartoons refrain from direct crossovers. Unless you're Cartoon Network. Cartoon Network, without a doubt, holds the crown for animated crossovers and referential Easter eggs, in terms of frequency and scale. The Grim Adventures of the KND, Ben 10 and Generator Rex Heroes United, Scooby-Doo and Johnny Bravo. The most iconic and beloved era of Cartoon Network's branding to this day is when every character from every show, even some of the important ones, coexisted in harmony with a gigantic city that integrates prime locations of these series. But then, the Mad Men of the late 2010s took it a step further. Not only did we have the Steven Universe episode Say Uncle, which, although the G-Man himself declares it as non-canon, Steven only begins to summon his shield on command perfectly after this episode. The ending also implies the existence of multiple Cartoon Network shows, current and old, at the same time. But hey, it's non-canon. Or could it be? Stick with me here. OKKO Let's Be Heroes, Gone Too Soon, threw us crossovers after crossovers that were canon to the show. Ian's own webcomic, RPG World, which served as the conclusion to the comic, Captain Planet, Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, Sonic the Hedgehog. One of the characters Rad cameoed in the finale of Mighty Magiswords, which ended up being proven as canon in a later episode of OKKO. But the biggest one in relation to the network itself is, without a doubt, Crossover Nexus. Although it focuses on the characters from OKKO, Steven Universe, Ben 10, and Teen Titans Go, it manages to squeeze in characters from nearly every single Cartoon Network show. By the end of the crossover, justifying these characters' existence in both CN City and their own shows. This episode justifies the existence of a Cartoon Network multiverse. But hold that thought. Criger the Creek is a Cartoon Network show that references other Cartoon Network shows. But not in the sense that these characters exist within the world, but as these shows exist as shows. So far, Etta and Nettie, Dexter's Laboratory, SWAT Cats, Symbiont Titan, even OKKO and Steven Universe. Steven Universe even has much better merch, KO's a video game character in Power Punchers, and on top of that, OKKO exists as an arcade game within Funland in Steven Universe, alongside Koala Princess being an anime in Steven Universe, but a character in OKKO. And don't even get me started on Little Butler existing as a television show in both Steven Universe and Criger the Creek. What's going on? The cherry on top? These three shows all take place within their own alternate version of Maryland. But it all makes sense. It may sound a little complex, but that's why I'm here to overthink, simplify, and break it down. Taking on the task Ian Jones Cordy proposed on Twitter. That was probably much less a call to action and more so, this is supposed to be cool, don't overthink it. But I'm sure someone probably heard my annoying little voice in the distance. So I'm going to explain the Cartoon Network Maryland verse of Steven Universe, OKKO, and Criger the Creek, tying it back to Crossover Nexus and CN City in order to explain the Cartoon Network multiverse as a whole. You following along? Because there's no slowing down. And with all that said, let's dive in. The best place to start would be with Steven Universe and its Maryland, as most Steven Universe viewers would be able to recognize that it takes place on an Earth with an alternate history and geography. The exact cause for this is unknown, although many fans chalk this up to the early stages of terraforming and colonization when the planet belonged to Pink Diamond. For the sake of this video, this is a rule that can be applied in varying capacities for the various Cartoon Network properties. In Steven Universe, the The eastern shore parts of Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia fuse into one state known as Delmarva. Although it's unknown if Rebecca Sugar exists in this universe, at least as someone within the animation industry, various Crewniverse members including Ian exist and live either within or near Beach City, as they're often shown frequenting the boardwalk, which could propose the question, are animation studios commonly found in Delmarva as opposed to Burbank? Or do these incidentals of the crew live a separate life, a separate path that never brought them into animation? Does Steve and Ian work as a game developer, considering the OKK arcade machine, or was it made by someone else? Typically, incidentals of crew members would be ignored, and honestly they still can be with this theory video, but for some explanations Ian provided on Twitter, it'll make sense to include them. The Steven Universe Maryland also houses its own entertainment catalog that really feeds into fantasy. RPG World, Koala Princess, Docopter. While sci-fi still exists, it feels like the existence of gems might have influenced more magic and fantasy heavy programming to the table. Although Docopter is like a cyborg, so I guess that's still sci-fi. Shifting gears to OKKO and its Maryland, as explained by Ian, OKKO takes place in an alternate universe Howard County. Lakewood serves as Dobbin Center, and Boxmoor serves as Columbia Crossing, with Route 175 between. The history of OKKO's Earth still remains a mystery, lore that's under lock and key within the confines of Ian's mind. But as the series takes place in the year 21X, it had to have experienced a drastic increase in technological advancements, alongside a larger presence of magic, all of those being justified by the existence of Glorbs. After all, the president of the universe created Glorbs to make life as fun as possible, giving characters and the world around them extraordinary qualities and abilities. And yeah, the series demonstrated time and time again that the box bots run off Glorbs, so that explains any technology boom. Going back to the landscape, a few prominent areas that differ from an average variation of Earth include the Danger Zone, Neo Riot City, and Battlebird 3K. In the world of OKKO, the existence of fictional characters within the universe is, questionable because everyone is real. Hero from RPG World, Sonic the Hedgehog, Koala Princess, and the crossover characters are always regarded as just another hero with their own unique power level, and never, oh, Garnet from Steven Universe, oh, Captain Planet from Captain Planet. But beyond that, KO had an abundance of chip damage merchandise, including a video game, Chip Adventure 2 Battle, an obvious substitute for Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which makes sense because the events of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle actually transpired in KO's world. It seems like all the entertainment, all the media, is based off of actual heroes. I'm sure I could be missing an example of a fictional character in KO's world who remains within the confines of KO's comic book or television screen, but largely, if someone has to exist as a fictional character in a different universe because their existence would defy the realities and rules, then chances are they can exist as a real living being in KO's world. Now we get to the Craig the Creek, Maryland, which could be Montgomery County according to Ian. And this is where things get a tad, complicated again. The way Ian originally explained it on Twitter makes it sound as if the Steven Universe and OKKO that we watched on our screens is the same Steven Universe and OKKO that Craig and his friends experienced, which in terms of content makes sense. To quote a few of his tweets exactly, Steven Universe and OKKO are media properties created by Ian JQ and Rebecca Sugar, two humans who grew up in the same Maryland as Craig from Craig of the Creek. Both properties have references to each other. Additionally, we can assume that Little Butler and Koala Princess are real pieces of media within the Crigerverse, and Steven Universe and OKKO are making references and crossovers to those pieces of media in Craig's world. That's the easiest way I can explain it, but it's why KO appears in Power Punchers and Kid Jammer shows up at the plaza. Afterwards, Matt Burnett chipped in to confirm that he and Ben Levin still didn't work on Steven Universe Future in the world of Craig of the Creek, they just both got hit by the same bus and died, but on different days. Thanks, Matt. So yeah, going back to the start of this video, everything Cartoon Network exists within Craig's world, just with better merchandise and licensed games, with the assumable addition of fictional shows within those Cartoon Network shows potentially being real properties in the Crigerverse. So Greg and Amethyst watching Little Butler and Kid Jammer being a character within OKKO is nothing more than Easter eggs to the actual Little Butler program and Kid Jammer as a video game character in Craig's world. as it's the most grounded of, well, most of Cartoon Network's catalog in terms of real-world physics and lack of extraterrestrial life or any of the sort. It kinda takes the throne as the realest Cartoon Network cartoon, except for the fact that every big shonen anime in its world has a pun-based substitute. My hoagie, Academia! But this brings us back to the importance of Crossover Nexus, because if OKKO is a TV show in Craig of the Creek, what the heck was Kelsey doing as one of Strike's stoned victims? Did she win a contest? Be in a special episode of OKKO? Well, if you ask me, not exactly. This is where we all bring it together. I don't think Crossover Nexus as an episode exists within the Craig the Creek universe, as that episode involves Craig's universe. Now, Ian did say Crossover Nexus, as far as we know, is its own pocket canon just for one episode. But I'm gonna stretch the as far as we know part to drag out this delusion. CN City oddly has new locations once it's restored, such as Gar's Bodega, Mungdal's Catering, the Adventure Time Treehouse, etc. Despite this, Gar's Bodega still exists in KO's world, and speaking of worlds, all the characters are able to return home. And that right there is the most vital factor. Raven conjures up portals for everyone to return to their respective universe, labeled by show. For the sake of this argument, I'm arguing this as canon, especially since Garnet gives KO a PAL card shortly after that appears in another episode. I believe these portals are all tied to the multiverse. Hell, Raven almost enters the Teen Titans 2003 portal, and we know that's a multiverse of its own, as both Titans and their counterparts would later team up in the Teen Titans Go vs. Teen Titans movie. So theoretically, if Raven mistakenly made a portal to the Craig the Creek universe, KO would have ended up in a world where he was simply a TV character, not an actual being. That's not to say KO himself would become a TV character, just that if any of the Creek kids saw him, they would assume he was a cosplayer. KO Kincaid wouldn't be able to identify himself as an actual real person. Everyone would think he would just be talking about and impersonating the cartoon character. Or if he accidentally followed Garnet through the Steven Universe portal, I imagine he would be able to play the KO arcade game in Beach City. With Uncle Grandpa on his list, he's a deity all of his own. It makes sense he got to Steven's universe and planned on accessing the others related to his list by creating and traveling through gateways to said separate universes. But then what exactly is CN City? In simple terms, it's the hub of the multiverse. It exists at the center, and whenever a new project is greenlit in our reality, its universe is represented within CN City as a location. I like to imagine that when a show gets canceled, Uncle Grandpa manifests in that particular universe, rises up to the center of the sky, looks at the inhabitants before him, pinches his nose, and says, "Good night," before wiping the universe from existence, and its location in CN City fades away. So, in conclusion, I believe Cartoon Network shows all exist within a multiverse, with almost each show being its own universe. Whereas the existence of alternate universes in our reality is often speculated along the lines of, what if this happened instead of that? What if this person was still alive? The Cartoon Network multiverse explores the ideas of, what if this cartoon was a real person? What if this other cartoon ceases to be a real person, but becomes a cartoon within a cartoon? What if this cartoon character becomes a video game character? What if this fictional show remains a fictional show, but alongside real shows? They can play on the idea of switching up what exists within mediums. Now, before we wrap up, I'd like to also imagine that smaller alternate universes hover around a main universe. For example, if we were able to take a step back and look at all the universes lined up, I think each core variation of a show would have the largest universe, but they would have smaller universes connected. OKKO, for example, has shown us a universe where the show is played by actors. KO, Rad, and Enid just film the show and collect a paycheck. There's also a universe where KO, Rad, and Enid are box bots against a human, Daryl, Shannon, and Raymond at the bodega, and a universe where Boxman and Gar share physical qualities of one another. The main status quo of OKKO that we know is the main, large universe, with the other variations of KO that we've seen kind of being smaller bonuses in the multiverse. Same with the Teen Titans. While arguably Go would be its own universe, I imagine it'd be next to the 2003 universe, with their counterparts from across the multiverse hovering around both those two universes. I probably lost everyone. And of course, not every show is its own exclusive universe. Billy and Mandy and Kids Next Door apparently coexist in the same universe, although Billy and Mandy's Fred Flintstone and Yogi Bear I believe to be alternate counterparts. I'm not sure about shows like Gym Partner and Ed and Eddie though, which were connected in the Invaded crossover. But you know, that was the end of the 2000s. They didn't even want to do Invaded. Who's counting that one? But as always, these are just my thoughts and I want to hear yours. What do you think? Do you believe in the Cartoon Network multiverse? And if so, how do you think it functions? Drop your conspiracies in the comments below or tweet them at Roundtable Vids. And for more of my own thoughts, you can always find me at Fox. We're also on Instagram. Help the Roundtable grow by either becoming a member of this channel or supporting us over at Patreon. Link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please throw it a like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great cartoon content. Thank you for watching and I hope you have an awesome day. Fox signing out.